From the Market Precinct, we move to Electrical Precinct, a place that became the heart of Newtown after it was established in the early 1900s. This area contains a number of significant sites, including the Workers' Museum, Saibono, and the Turbine Hall.
You had this rapidly exploding city with thousands of people and industry, and the mining industry itself all needed to have electrical supply.
The first building to house the power supply was the first President Street Power Station, which used coal and gas to generate electricity for the new tram system and the mines. From a place of power supply, the Saibono building is now a place of scientific discovery and houses an ever-changing interactive science museum.
The Sai clearly stands for science, and the Bono is the Chivenda word for vision. And what we're looking to do is to give people a much longer vision for them to have insight into the way the world works around them.
Today, the Saibono Discovery Center is the largest science and technology center in Southern Africa.
There's a lot of effort that's going into exploring the interface between science and art. And that's our next challenge, is to make sure that Saibono does that exploration and that it becomes part of the cultural and artistic life of Newtown, not just the educational or the scientific life.
Turbine Hall is part of the third electrical power station, and it was where the turbines were housed that were driven in order to make electricity.
The Turbine Hall was used from the 1930s until the 70s. Cooling towers were built next to the hall, and they were imploded in 1985 after the city established a new electrical plant. The Turbine Hall was abandoned and left derelict. Eventually, the city found an investor who has committed tenants, including Anglo Gold Ashanti and the Forum.
We wanted to leave as much of the grittiness and industrialness as possible without leaving it messy. We wanted to have a complete contrast between the modern and the light and the glass and the old industrial nature of the building. People have been fantastic. Lots of really interesting, young, funky people say, oh, I'd love to work here, which I think is a great compliment. One very funky person said, I'd like to live here, which I thought was even better.
It becomes such a wonderful part of the city that you don't have this pile of rusting steel that really detracts from the city, but you have a live building which still retains the heritage of when it was built, and yet is being used for modern purposes, and there are people going in and out and using it. And it's such a wonderful space. If one goes and stands inside the Turbine Hall, it just gives you a wonderful feeling of spaciousness and this wonderful design that we couldn't afford to do in this day. You know, people don't build buildings like that, monumental buildings like that.
What can't be ignored is the fact that worker exploitation was evident in this area as soon as there was a workforce. The Workers' Museum exists as a monument to the lives of the people who built this city.
I think the important thing about museums like this is that they have to be understood as a living heritage. This is not artifacts from the long distance past. The living conditions here, of course, were dictated by the pure need for profit and nothing else. Dignity here didn't matter. In fact, dignity was better if it didn't exist. Firstly, I mean, you start at a fairly basic level. I mean, how you sleep. One only has to look at the concrete bunkers on which these migrants had to sleep, packed in small rooms, at least 20 odd each. It's really an understatement to say they stripped someone's dignity. The very idea of being human was taken out. I mean, one must see the way people arrived on the mines, your first medical examinations, these hundreds of men stripped naked. You're basically just a piece of flesh. There's no person here. You know, you don't get talked to. You know, you don't talk back. You don't converse with those next to you. You're supposed to shut up, keep quiet, and it's a very alien world.
Although the municipal workers from this compound worked at an electrical plant across the road, they did not have electricity in their own compound.
Very little of the kind of life this museum wants to talk about actually gets told.
Old painful history is particularly relevant. It's the way that we at least should teach people not to make the same mistake. And there's very little credit given in Johannesburg. We have one statue of miners, but people don't understand that all the wealth, and it's the wealth of South Africa basically, comes from underground, from the men who are prepared to face some of the most ghastly working conditions. But this is one way of meeting our conscience and saying, yes, this is the small debt we are repaying for the thousands and thousands of men who built Johannesburg over the years. It's a better memorial than just putting up a bronze statue and saying, okay, we've done our duty, that was it.